Welcome to the channel, my name is Coach and I'm your go-to source for everything relating to NXT, and tonight was NXT Homecoming, which was a show filled with lots of NXT legends. And if you know my channel whatsoever, you'll know that NXT is my favorite show in the world. Current NXT is what I consider peak wrestling right now, but there was a time way back before AEW started where Black and Gold NXT was my favorite and was pretty much all I watched for a very long time. So instead of just doing my normal review of the show where I recap what happened, talk about my feelings about it, we're gonna list every legend that was also on the show and just talk about how effectively they were used. So kind of like a double whammy of an episode. So let's get right into it. So kicking off the show, we have Triple H coming up, makes our first legend. Yes, Triple H is an NXT legend. He's literally the godfather of NXT. He comes down to ring and he says he can't believe how good it feels to come back home in Full Sail University as the crowd chants his name. He goes on to say that the 3 letters NXT is something that is super special, and it's all thanks to the fans, because NXT used to be just a tiny whisper that nobody really watched, and now it's possibly the best show in the world, which is kind of what Evolve is right now. If you don't watch Evolve, you should really check it out. It's pretty much what NXT was at the start, and it's gonna be big. I covered that on my channel too, little plug, you should watch that. He says where NXT is right now is all due to the fans, and because they all chanted "We are NXT," which is when Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid, comes out. That makes it our second NXT legend. Again, not necessarily a wrestler, but come on. Shawn Michaels, you know, he's an NXT legend. Shawn Michaels thanks Triple H for making the time to come here and making billion-dollar deals, but he says that NXT is fine now, Triple H isn't needed here anymore, and that they're ready to steer the ship into the future. That's when things get a tiny bit tense, where Triple H looks at Shawn Michaels and asks, "What if I wanted to come back?" And the two have a little stare down. The fans are into it, and William Regal comes out, the crowd chants for him, makes it our third legend. So far it's only been management legends, but it counts, it still counts. William Regal then tries to make a War Games match between Triple H and Shawn Michaels, which is kind of funny if you really try and think about it a bit deeper, but we don't. A short little appearance from William Regal, and while he does appear later tonight, right now he's interrupted by Charlotte Flair, who comes out, and she is soon followed by Alexa Bliss, which is 2 more legends, putting our opening segment to a total of 5 legends. Alexa Bliss says that she thinks Triple H and Shawn Michaels argue more than they do, and Charlotte disagrees, and Charlotte thinks the two of them are besties. Alexa does not. Charlotte then goes on to say that the backbone of NXT has always been the women's division, and this is where the women's revolution was born. She then goes on to name drop the Four Horsewomen and a bunch of former NXT women's talent, half of which who aren't here anymore. Ember, Moon, Carmella, Paige, Shayna Baszler is technically still here, but that's a gray area. The point being, the NXT women's division has always been the backbone of women's wrestling, and if you don't agree with that, Charlotte makes it clear, suck it. We technically had 5 legends in this opening segment, but I was a bit iffy on adding Alexa Bliss as a legend, considering her career really only started to pick up after she left NXT, and she had a fine NXT run, but I can't say it was actually legendary. But I will add her to the list, it's just with a kinda asterisk. We go backstage where the Culling are walking towards the ring. We're getting ready for the shot at the Women's Tag Team Championships when Tatum Paxley sees Lyra Valkyria, and the two hug and have a tiny little reunion. We're gonna add Lyra Valkyria later, just thought I should mention that because Lyra Valkyria and Tatum Paxley was one of my ultimate favorite stories in all of wrestling. I really loved it, and just seeing them have a tiny reunion, even if it was nothing at all, really made me very happy, and that was possibly the best return all night for me, in my opinion. Which is what leads us to the opening match for the NXT Women's Tag Team Championships, and I feel like everybody already knew the results. There's no way that Tatum Paxley and Izzy Dame were going to win the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships, as cool as that would have been, but the match itself was pretty fun. I liked the dynamic of Tatum Paxley and Alexa Bliss being the 2 weirdos, while Charlotte Flair and Izzy Dame are surprisingly very similar, both powerhouses, very blonde, very generic, but they both bring something that makes them stand out. At the end of the day, it was Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair who retained their NXT Women's Tag Team Championships. No, retained the Women's Tag Team Championships. I wish it was NXT Women's Tag Team Championships. It was a really solid match to start the show, if not a bit predictable, but I ended up enjoying myself, although I really would have liked if Izzy Dame and Tatum Paxley just won those belts and brought it down to NXT, where I feel like they could be utilized a lot better. We head backstage again where Zarya and Sol Ruka are having a lot of bickering about their match last week, where they kinda had a major disagreement and a major loss. Sol Ruka is blaming Zarya, Zarya is blaming Sol Ruka when Lainey Reed comes up, and she tells Sol that she's gonna have to get her mind out of all this drama, because if she doesn't, Lainey Reed is gonna come and take that Speed Championship at No Mercy, when Candice LeRae, the other #1 contender for the Speed Championship, also comes up. Lainey Reed and Candice LeRae proceed to then bicker with each other instead and walk off the screen, and then Shayna Baszler, of all people, pops up. Shayna tells Soul that being a double champ is impressive, but Shayna Baszler is the longest reigning NXT Women's Champion, and she also was a Women's Tag Team Champion before. Shayna tries to give Soul and Zarya some advice, that they have something special and they should really put their problems aside and try to fix it. And Soul and Zarya kinda do, just a quick little nod being like, yeah, we're fine, but I have a feeling there's a lot more story to tell here. Now, when it comes to which legends appeared here, obviously Shayna Baszler is added, she's an NXT legend, she even gave all the reasons herself in this promo. And then there's Candice LeRae, who I would add as a legend because she played a very important part in one of the best eras of women's wrestling, but she's also been appearing on NXT very frequently the last few weeks, especially in the Women's Speed Tournament, so I feel like she's not here for that special appearance because she has been here. But I will add her to the list considering that she's not a regular NXT figure, although she's been appearing in the last few weeks. Overall, rounds is up to 7 legends, and when it comes to Soul, Ruka and Zarya, I really hope they do not break up. I love that we're building a bit of tension, adding a bit of storyline there, making them kind of doubt each other, but I don't think we should break up. They're one of my favorite women's tag teams in all of the world right now. Possibly my favorite. They're the only one that really feels like they have that much chemistry and they really mesh well, so they should absolutely not break up. The next match on the card is the one being marketed as the biggest NXT tag team match of all time. The legendary team of DIY, which adds 2 more legends, versus the reunited Trick Mello gang, Carmelo Hayes being arguably a legend in NXT. I mean, he's held pretty much everything you can hold in NXT. He is a legend. And this was once again another really solid match. DIY can just go, Trick and Mello also can really go, and I think the novelty, at least for me, of seeing Trick Mello gang reunited is very special. I said in my last week's video, they're one of the most special parts of NXT for me of all time, just because of what they meant for my wrestling experience. And surprise surprise, Trick and Mello win. They did have some disagreements where it looked like Trick might attack Mello during the match, but he didn't, and they win. Well, they did kind of win with the help of The Miz, who attacked Johnny Gargano on the outside, allowing Trick and Mello to pick up the victory over Tommaso Ciampa. A nice little detail following up on Carmella's story from the main roster. And I will say, Trick, Miz and Mello really look nice together. This is a faction I could absolutely get behind. And that's just kind of Trick's thing at this point, isn't it? He's been teaming up with the High Rise. Hell, on TNA he's been teaming up with First Class, but none of those factions seem to be existing for much longer. And then obviously right now, which again, Miz and Mello with Trick, I don't think it's gonna last long, but damn do I want to see it. While The Miz is cool and all, he can't be classified as an NXT legend at all. I mean, he will never really wrestle on NXT. Per se, a few appearances, but that can really make him count. So only in this match you really had Carmelo Hayes, DIY, who are the NXT legends. So that brings us up to 3, which in total brings us up to 10 so far, and we're not even halfway in the show, so there's a lot. Sami Zayn is interviewed backstage and he says being back here is flooded him with memories, and one of his favorite matches was in this building where he won the NXT championship. And then Miz asked if anyone on NXT reminds him of himself, and he says yeah, Javon Evans, which yeah, I can see it. Josh Briggs then interrupts him. Josh Briggs is in a feud with Javon Evans and tells Sami Zayn to just forget about Javon Evans because Javon Evans, he's a bum, he's nothing. Javon Evans flies out of nowhere and he just starts attacking Josh Briggs. The two have a tiny little brawl that barely lasts 5 seconds before a bunch of security guards pull away Josh Briggs, and Sami Zayn pulls Javon Evans to the side and tells Javon Evans that, you know, things aren't easy for guys like them, underdogs, but the sky is actually the limit, and then holds up the United States Championship, which Javon Evans, suspiciously for at least a second, looks a bit too long at that United States Championship. So first off, Sami Zayn's being added to this list. He's a former NXT champion and he's by far an NXT legend, so makes it all up to 11. And on the other hand, I mean, Sami Zayn has a US Open challenge, right? And I was thinking the other day, I didn't talk about this at all, Javon Evans would be a dope ass opponent from NXT to come up and accept that US Open challenge. And I don't know if this was like a tiny tease towards that, but god, that would be a bang of a match. I would so be down for that. So honestly, hopefully Javon Evans goes up to SmackDown just for one night only and accepts that US Open challenge. What a match. The next match on the card though is for the NXT North American Championship or NXT Canadian Championship if you're Ethan Page, and he defends it against Tyler Breeze, who I was also very hesitant to add to the Legends aspect, but Tyler Breeze, he's been on NXT for many years, although he only returned now. He's a former NXT Tag Team Champion, so I mean he's held the championship and he's had a long run, so I also added him to this list, but similar to Candice LeRae, kind of an asterisk there. But also in the crowd for this match is El Hijo de Dr. Wagner Jr., who he's having a feud with Ethan Page. Possibly. I mean, they're kind of teasing it here because at AAA Worlds Collide, you know, the two of them were in the same match, but El Hijo de Dr. Wagner Jr. won. I'm sorry if I'm butchering his name. So it looks like they're building a feud there. And while his appearance is cool, he's obviously not an NXT legend, but I think similar to The Miz, it's just another banger of a wrestler appearing on the show. So, you know, all of these legends plus 2. This is also a nice little fun match, which last week I predicted is going to be an Ethan Page victory, and it is. And what I'm loving about this Ethan Page title reign is him just defending the championship against a bunch of non-Canadians. Obviously Tyler Breeze is Canadian, but Tavion Knights, who he's currently feuding with, is a major American. So I think that's a cool aspect. And if he truly goes into a feud with El Hijo de Dr. Wagner Jr., it's against a Mexican. So it's really bringing out the aspect of it being a North American championship. And that I like, even though he's calling it the Canadian championship. And his run has been seriously entertaining. So that just adds to it. And then we go backstage where Tavion Knight says that of course Ethan Page gets off easy again, and that's when Damian Priest appears. Damian Priest says that he knows exactly who can take Ethan Page down, and that is Tavion Knight. And then he says that he went to talk to Ava and got Tavion Knight a North American Championship match at No Mercy. And I really like this. This was a nice little effective use of Damian Priest. Obviously he's a legend. He, similarly to Alexa Bliss, his career really picked up after he left NXT, but that doesn't mean he's not an NXT legend. He held the North American Championship, which is exactly why I liked him doing this. He had like one of the most iconic North American Championship celebrations ever, being in a hot tub with 2 baddies. Like, damn, my dream. So it makes perfect sense that he would want that championship in some good hands, which he thinks is Tavion Knight. So I really liked it, a nice effective use, and Damian Priest adds to the list. But I do not think Tavion Knight is going to win that championship. It just doesn't feel like Tavion Knight is there yet, and with how good Ethan Page's reign has been, I don't think Tavion Knight is the one to dethrone him. It would do a lot for Tavion Knight, but I just can't see him being an effective champion yet. He still needs to figure himself out, figure his character out, have that real crowd connection before he's there, and I think the championship is better suited on Ethan Page, at least for the time being. Following that up, we had the Grayson Waller effect, who I also added to the Legends list, because although he was only in NXT for a very short amount of time, and he was in NXT for a time that not a lot of people really cared to watch, I do think he did a significant amount of stuff to be considered at. I mean, he won the Iron Survivor Challenge, he won War Games, and he was in multiple high-profile matches. So kind of in a similar tier to Alexa Bliss, I feel like, but he slightly achieved a bit more. Regardless, he's on this list, and it's the Grayson Waller effect. He welcomes his most important guests, possibly in the show's history, being Obafemi and Ricky Saints. He goes on to mock the 2 wrestlers in the ring, which, like, you're brave. He calls him overrated and Ricky Soft, which is like, damn dude, you want to get killed by Obafemi. I mean, he didn't he at Vengeance Day get absolutely killed by Obafemi in a handicap match with Austin Theory? Yeah, he did. Regardless, he goes on to diss both men, and Ricky Saints and Obafemi have a one-on-one. Ricky Saints says that he has something Obafemi doesn't have, and that's heart, and he's been fighting all his life, and Obafemi will not win. But honestly, Obafemi absolutely cooked him on the mic tonight. Obafemi is so good. Like, man, fuck, he's so good. In the ring, he's unstoppable. I genuinely think he's going to be one of the best wrestlers on the main roster one day. But even on the mic, he's like one of those people you don't expect to be so good. I usually try to compare him to Brock Lesnar as someone who you don't think is so good on the mic, but when they speak, they're actually not just entertaining, but really intimidating, and that's how I feel about Obafemi. So he absolutely cooked, but the important thing here is Trick Williams appears, and Trick Williams says that Obafemi has something of Trick's, and that's the NXT Championship. And Grayson Waller just takes initiative and makes a match for next week between Trick Williams and Obafemi for both championships, which is like, damn, okay, massive match, and where did you get all of this power, Grayson Waller? Not that I care. Banger of a match next week. But even Grayson Waller picks up the phone. He says on his phone that a bunch of TNA wrestlers are pissed about this, and says that the only reason TNA is relevant is because he just mentioned them. Now, while I'm excited for this match next week, it's absolutely gonna end in DQ with a bunch of TNA wrestlers attacking, because all over Twitter, a bunch, or X, whatever you want to call it, a bunch of TNA wrestlers were going psycho about this. Santana, Moose, Steph DeLander was even involved, which is like, girl, you haven't appeared on NXT in ages, shut up. And then also Mustafa Ali. So I have a feeling, so what I think is gonna happen is a bunch of NXT wrestlers are just gonna jump the main event, invade NXT, and we're gonna have a War Games match, which is gonna be damn awesome. But I wonder, okay, When that happens next week, we're going to talk more about it, but God, I'm excited for NXT next week. We go backstage for a quick little segment where Ren Sinclair is shooting some ideas about new music, new gear, just a bunch of stuff to Charlie Dempsey about the NQCC to try and breathe some new life into this. And that's when Charlie Dempsey says that, well, he can't do any of that because he's going to Japan for a month just for a little excursion to try and find himself. So she's gonna have to hold down the fort. And she says that while he's gone, she's gonna make sure the NQCC becomes glorious, which is when Bobby Roode appears. What's funny here is that Bobby Roode did his whole glorious thing, but they forgot to add like the crowd noises or have a pre-recorded sound there. So it was just all quiet while he made his glorious taunt, which was supposed to be where the crowd was supposed to get involved. That just didn't happen. And then Charlie Dempsey is confused. He's like, how the hell is this all possible? Whenever you say something, the people appear, just like Joe Henry, and then Joe Henry appears out of nowhere. Just love it. Bobby Roode tells Joe Henry that he was so proud to see him on WrestleMania with the TNA World Championship, but there's another title that he wants Joe Henry to go after, and that's the NXT Championship. I really like this. Bobby Roode endorsing Joe Henry feels really cool because Bobby Roode was once the longest reigning TNA World Heavyweight Champion, Joe Henry being a former TNA Champion, and their gimmicks being so similar. Glorious, I believe in Joe Henry. The whole thing feels very nice. I really like that. Along with this, I love what we're doing with Joe Henry. We can talk about that in a second more because he does have some involvement later on in the show. But with Ren Sinclair, she's absolutely going to turn the NQCC up on its head. Like, we've already had the teases of Kendall Gray joining, and while I don't know if it's going to be Kendall Gray joining, I can absolutely see Ren Sinclair just adding a bunch of people, bunch of different gimmicks, characters to the NQCC while Charlie Dempsey is gone, and then when Charlie Dempsey returns, it's just a whole mess. I think that would be an interesting story, and I do think that's where we're going. Regardless, I love how the NQCC always just has so much entertainment around it. From my faction I was once led by Drew Gulak and being extremely boring to being the best faction right now in NXT consistently, it's really cool for them. But Darkstate are also interviewed, and they're being asked about Joe Henry last week, but before one of the members of Darkstate can say Joe Henry, they stop him because whenever Joe Henry's name is said, he just appears, which is, honestly, I was a bit weird feeling about that gimmick when it started, but damn, it's entertaining. They don't say his name though, but that's just what I wanted to say. Montez Ford comes up to Darkstate and he approaches them and says that he's made a lot of memories with those tag team championships. He just wished he was here to share those memories with his former partner, which is weird because Angelo Dawkins is not here, and I know they've been building kind of a breakup storyline with them on the main roster, so it's nice seeing them continued here. It's just a very weird spot. And Montez Ford also added to the list. Bobby Roode earlier also, forgot to mention that. But yeah, this segment generally feels like a whole bunch of nothingness. It was cool, you know, a little quick segment, have Montez Ford there, mention Joe Henry, but I feel like we could have done without it. Final segment before the main event, Lexus King is in the ring and he says who better to celebrate NXT Homecoming than the Homecoming King himself, Lexus King. He says he hates NXT Black and Gold because it was nothing special and that the current NXT is so much better because the people here actually care. That's when Finn Balor comes out, another legend added to the list obviously, but I am feeling weird about this because he was treated as a face, and I know I know Judgment Day is constantly in this turmoil of will they break up or won't they, but I mean, I don't know, I feel like this was very weird. I mean, you could have brought the whole Darkstate up. I mean, there's so many NXT legends in Darkstate, so you might as well have just brought the whole faction up. But yeah, Finn Balor being a face here felt weird. It was nice seeing him. He gets up on the top rope. Lexus King is then attacked by Miles Bourne from behind. And then Lexus King being on the floor gets hit with the coup de grace from Finn Balor. Finn Balor then raises Miles Bourne's hand, which like also feels weird because Miles Bourne is the exact type of guy he would hate on the main roster. So just cool, but very conflicting on how I feel about this. Thankfully, it's probably gonna have no effect. This is probably non-canon to all of the storylines going on. But yeah, it was weird. And then we head to the main event where we have a total of 4 NXT legends: Bianca Belair, Rhea Ripley, Lyra Valkyria, and Stephanie Vaquer. Bianca Belair is just in the crowd, which feels like a waste of what we could have done with her. She could have at least cut a promo or something. I mean, she's very good at that, so you might have done that. But it's Fatal Influence versus Rhea Ripley, Stephanie Vaquer, and Lyra Valkyria. Tiffany Stratton unfortunately got injured on SmackDown, I believe, so she's not here, and damn, I really wanted to see Tiffany Stratton, one of my favorites. But hey, Lyra Valkyria is also one of my favorites, so I don't mind her being replaced. And a freaking amazing match. If you really thought Fatal Influence had any chance of winning, I don't know what to tell you. You're probably very much a casual, or you had massive hopes for Fatal Influence. But no, Rhea Ripley pins JC Jane, which also goes completely against my prediction because I believe JC Jane is not going to be the one that gets pinned. It's going to be one of the other members. and then that's gonna lead to Jacy Jayne throwing Fatal Influence away, teaming up with Laney Reed and stuff. But no, that's not what happened, which is kind of weird for me. So I wonder where this is going. But hell, Jacy Jayne just always taking pins, but personally I would get pinned by Rhea Ripley too, so I don't blame her. And even besides that, I just enjoyed a lot that happened with this match. Stephanie Vaquer and Rhea Ripley hitting that move, it was so entertaining, and Booker T seriously got a heart attack. He's honestly the best commentator in wrestling, like eat bricks if you don't agree with me. So that was NXT for you tonight, and for the show's rating, I would say this was a solid 10 out of 10 show. Again, not the most perfect wrestling show ever, but my ratings go based off how much I enjoyed it, and out of enjoyment it was 10 out of 10. Loved seeing the legends, loved seeing some of the stories progress too, even despite the legends. I think the legends just advanced a bunch of stories. And then when it comes to how many legends appeared, there was a total of 21 legends on tonight's show, plus you had The Miz and El Hijo de Dr. Wagner Jr., which aren't legends, but they're fun little appearances, so you can make it 23 if you want to, but just former NXT legends, there were 21 with a very wide ratio of just 8 women, the rest all being male. But I can't lie, this was a really fun show, and it set up a few things for next week I'm really excited for. The build to No Mercy is looking really good. There's going to be a bunch of matches on that card that I'm very excited for, and the potential for next week's main event is insane. Because if we have a clean match, either Trick Williams or Obafemi is going to be a double champ holding both the TNA and NXT championships. If that doesn't happen, maybe Ricky Saints attacks, and that's going to be the boring outcome, which shouldn't happen. But maybe it's an invasion from TNA, which if it is, the story is going to really heat up with a potential War Games match. Yeah, you can't miss NXT next week. But you know, part of me really hopes Obafemi becomes a double champ just cause. So that was NXT for you tonight. I really hope you enjoyed my review. I do NXT, TNA, Evolve, and I'm trying to do SmackDown every single week. I also do a podcast with PUWF every Sunday night, so you should tune into that, where we also just talk about Evolve. You should tune into that because it's a whole lot of fun. We're just chatting about Evolve, so seriously, join us. And I hope to see you guys again soon. Goodbye, everyone.